On today's show, it wasn't always pretty, but the Cavs get what I think is a pretty nice win. And it's not just because they won the game, but how they won the game, I think is important. I'll tell you why on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi again, everybody. My name is Danny Cunningham, and I cover the Cleveland Cavaliers over at my Substack, The Inside Shot, and you're listening to another edition of Locked On Cavs, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network in all of America. You can find this show the same place you find any other Locked On podcast. That's Apple, that's Spotify, and that is YouTube as well. If you're watching the video as we get started here on YouTube, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up button and click the notification bell, and make sure that you hit subscribe wherever you might be listening to the show. That is the very best way you can help to grow Locked On Cavs. On today's show, we're going to talk through the good things from the 94-87 win over the Charlotte Hornets, and we will also talk through some of the things that went wrong in what was, I think, a disgusting display of offense in the second half, particularly for the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I want to begin with the good things, because ultimately, this was a nice win for the Cavs. And if you listen to my podcast earlier this week, I said that Charlotte, record wise, doesn't jump out at you. Like, they're not a great team. They're in 12th in the Eastern Conference, but they've been playing some really good basketball for the past month. They've racked up wins over the likes of Oklahoma City on the road. They beat the Denver Nuggets on the road. They beat the Los Angeles Lakers on the road. They've won over Orlando. They beat the Cavs at one point in Cleveland. Like, they have some nice wins. And they also entered this game with the third best net rating in the Eastern Conference over the past month. So, this is a Hornets team that I do think is better than its record. And the Cavs got off to a great start in this game. I believe they were up 19-4 early on. They led by as many as 27 in the first half, and they were doing it differently. Now, part of it was the tides finally seemed to turn in terms of shot luck. Did the Cavs play strong enough defense to hold the Hornets to 87 points? No, they didn't. But did the Cavs play good defense? Yes, I do think that the Cavs played relatively well on that end of the floor. So, I think both things can be true. The Cavs played a good defensive game. They didn't play a great, outstanding defensive game, at least not as a team. The Hornets were still able to generate some really nice looks from beyond the arc that they missed. They held the Hornets to 17% from beyond the arc, and more often than not, you're going to win that game. But I do think if you're a Cavs fan, it probably just feels nice for once to see a team not make all of their wide open 3-pointers, because that is a thing that has really bit the Cavs fairly frequently this year. And at some point that needs to come back down to earth. And I do think that Wednesday night's game was part of that. But I love the way that the Cavs opened up this game, because part of the reason why Charlotte started 2 of 16 from beyond the arc was, yeah, some of those looks were good looks, but the Cavs did a great job, I thought, making the Hornets uncomfortable with what their offensive process was. I thought the Cavs did a great job early on of establishing the physicality that they did. That to me was a big thing that stood out with how the Cavs played defensively in the first half. They did a great job in the glass in the first half, and ultimately they out-rebounded the Hornets, who over the past month have been the best rebounding team in basketball. They out-rebounded Charlotte by 13. That to me is a good sign for this team. But I thought it was also a really good response. The fact that they got off to a good start, even if offensively things weren't necessarily great, the fact that they got off to a good start and led this game the way that they did and built a 27-point lead, it was yes, you know what? That is exactly what I think we needed to see from this team coming off of the game on Monday against Oklahoma City, where the Cavs were just absolutely boat race. We needed to see this team be locked in the way they were in the first half, play at the intensity level that they played at in the first half. And the Cavs offensively throughout the entire night weren't very good. There were very few points, maybe the first quarter, but there were very few points watching. It's you know what? The Cavs are really clicking offensively. There was a lot of bad stuff on that end of the floor. And we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. But I actually do think there's a way to spin that into a good thing. Now, it's not a good thing that the Cavs played as poor as they did on the offensive end. Obviously, you don't need to, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that. But I do think it is a good thing the Cavs found a way to win a game when their offense was terrible. Entering the night on Wednesday, the Cavs had 7 games this season where they shot less than 41% from the floor. They were 0-7 in those games. In this game, they shot under 40%. I believe they shot 39% from the field against the Hornets. Finding a way to win that game is a really, really important thing, because this is a Cavs team that when the postseason does arrive, they have to know how to win games in multiple ways. And this was a win that they won with their defense first. I thought they did a great job around the rim. I thought that was something like Evan Mobley defensively, and we'll talk about his offense too, coming up in a little bit. Defensively, like, he was phenomenal in this game in all areas, whether it's near the rim, on the perimeter. Like, he is just such a monster defensively that I do think the Cavs should be better than what they have been. And part of that is bad luck. And funny enough, like, if you want to laugh at me for my Substack, The Inside Shot, I wrote like a 2,100 word feature on the Cavs 3-point defense and how bad it's been and how the quality of shots they're allowing is a little too much, and like some of the unlucky stuff, because there has been unlucky stuff that's been mixed in there. And then the Hornets shoot 17% from 3. So if you want to laugh at me, I spent 5 hours writing that on Wednesday, and then the Cavs have their best defensive game against 3-pointers since December of 2024. But again, getting back to like that being the thing is they didn't allow, because we have seen this so frequently throughout this year. We have seen when the Cavs have a bad offensive night, we have seen them allow it to impact who they are defensively. And that didn't happen in this game. And yeah, the Hornets had a better offensive second half than they did than they did in the first half. And like, I kind of think you knew that was going to come, because the Hornets have been so good offensively lately. But holding this Hornets team, and I realized that the Cavs only scored 38 points in the second half, but holding this Hornets team to 32 points in the first half, which is the worst half of offensive basketball that the Hornets have played so far this season, I think that should be looked at as an accomplishment. And that's why I think ultimately, like, was this the prettiest game? No. Are there a lot of things to be frustrated about from this game if you're a Cavs fan? Yeah, absolutely. I think there are plenty of things. We will talk about those things. But I do think that, one, getting a win matters. Finding a way to win a game after losing by 30 points on Monday on the road against a team that's been playing very good basketball is a really good thing. Like, I think that is a thing genuinely to be happy about, no matter what. Like, no matter if this game was much closer than it should have been, this is a thing to be happy about. And winning this game, where the Cavs, did they get a little bit of shot luck? Sure, they certainly did. But they also held the Hornets to some not so easy shots too. Like, there were some good looks, certainly, but Charlotte's shot quality, like their expected effective field goal percentage was 53, which is like 10 points lower than what Oklahoma City's was on Monday. Like, this was a much, much better defensive performance for the Cavs. And yet the Hornets shot way below their expected. The Cavs also shot way below their expected, because the Cavs were the team in this game, at least analytically speaking, that generated better looks. Now, the Cavs had a lot of problems offensively. I want to dive into that in a second. But I do think some other good things to come out of this game were the fact that, like, they were able to, again, change things up, because the rotation was different in this game for the Cavs. Larry Nance Jr. was back in it, Lonzo Ball back out of the rotation, which, I mean, this whole rivalry week thing too, Cavs Hornets being a nationally televised game in rivalry week is absurd. And I understand it is built around LaMelo Ball and Lonzo Ball. It was funny to me that LaMelo actually came off the bench in this game, which is something Charlotte is doing when they have back-to-backs, and the Hornets play again on Thursday. They didn't play the day before this. The Hornets actually had a bit of a rest advantage coming into this game. So, like, the fact that one of the brothers came off the bench and the other brother had a DNP-CD, just like, was this really a thing that needed to be a thing during rivalry week? Which also, like, very strong argument that you could make, and I would listen to, and I would agree with, does not need to be a thing. But I also think too, for the Cavs to win a game, because this was, think about some of their other really bad performances offensively this year. Think about the game against Oklahoma City on Monday, the loss against the Warriors. To win a game in 2026 where they only score 94 points, where they have their worst 3-point shooting percentage of the season. This was the worst game they've had so far from beyond the arc this year. They shot 20%. They were 8 of 40 from beyond the arc. And is that a little bit different if Donovan Mitchell's feet are a little bit smaller because he hit 2 long twos with a foot on the line? Sure, but that's not the reality that we live in. The fact that this team, down as many guys as they are, because I do think they miss Darius a lot in this game. I think they miss Sam a lot in this game, and I do think they've missed Max a lot this year. But being down as many guys as they were in this game, like, is this a win worth celebrating about and bragging about? No. But I think that this same exact Cavs team that played this game on Wednesday, if they would have played this same exact game a month ago, they would not have won it. And I think that is why you can look at this and say, you know what? That's not the game that I want to watch the Cavs play. I know that the Cavs are capable of playing much better basketball than what they showed on Wednesday night against the Hornets. They're capable of holding a lead, unlike the way they did against the Hornets. And like, I guess this is the grossest wire-to-wire win I have ever watched. Like, the Cavs did not trail in this game for a single second of it. And it still felt like, you know what, the Cavs could have been a lot better than they were. They led for 47 minutes and 29 seconds, and it did not necessarily feel like it because the second half was so bad. But for all of those things to be true, and the Cavs still found a way to win, I think that's something that's worth being happy about. Maybe it's not worth celebrating, but I think it's something that you can say, you know what, all wins count the same in the win-loss column. There were a lot of good things from this game. There were some bad things from this game, but winning a basketball game against a solid team, they're not great, but they're not bottom feeders either, in a style that has not been the Cavs so far this year, I think ultimately there's more good than bad there. But now we do have to talk about the bad things, because offensively for most of the night, it was terrible. In the second half, it's some of the worst offense the Cavs have played this year. We'll talk about why that was and what needs to change next right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life, and this year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours and hours, I mean, taxes are an absolute pain trying to figure out the different forms you need. You can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person, or you can connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction that you could possibly imagine. You can upload your documents, go on about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It is a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. That's it. $150 all in. And if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th, and $150 all in is the deal you will get. So take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local. That is LOCAL. Again, turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Thank you again for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen. Thank you to those of you everydayers that make Locked On Cavs your first listen every single day. And if you are somebody like that, you might want to check out the new Everydayer Club, because it gives you access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Cavs that's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app out there. Plus, an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat for just listeners of this show. A link is in the show description, both on YouTube or wherever else you might be listening to this podcast if you would like to learn more. The second half for the Cavs on Wednesday night against the Hornets was gross, I think might be the best way to describe it. I mean, offensively for the Cavs, they were not good really throughout the evening. The 94 points that the Cavs scored in this game were the fewest points scored in the NBA by a team that won a game this year. Like, statistically speaking, this is the worst offensive performance that has won a game in the NBA this year. And it felt like it for most of the night. Like, the Cavs scored in the first quarter of this game, they scored 33 points, and it wasn't necessarily always pretty. They didn't shoot the ball well from beyond the arc, but they hit 3 of their 8 threes in the first quarter. They were 3 of 11, but they shot 50% from the field. Evan Mobley was really good early on. Jared Allen was good early on. Donovan Mitchell had his best quarter in the first quarter. Like, there were a lot of things in the first quarter to be happy about, I think, offensively. And the fact that the Cavs looked as good as they did with Donovan off the floor and Evan on the floor in the first quarter was a really good thing. Like, in the first 12 minutes, Evan Mobley played 7 minutes and 40 seconds, and he was a plus 20. Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen played 9 minutes and 39 seconds. Those two were paired together in this game. They were a plus 8. So, like, I looked at that as, okay, this is a really, really good sign in a quarter that the Cavs won by 13, that Evan Mobley was as good as he was. But the second half of this game was just atrocious offense. And overall, like, this was not a good offensive performance whatsoever. But there are some just eye-popping statistics from the second half of this game that are going to make you want to pull your hair out about the Cavs offense. So in the final 24 minutes of the game, the Cavs had 13 turnovers compared to just 10 assists. They finished the game with 20 assists and 20 turnovers. Donovan Mitchell was not good in this game. Like, credit to him for doing kind of everything that the Cavs needed him to do. His final line was 24 points. He played 37 minutes, which is a rarity for him. Needed 20 shots to get there, was 2 of 8 from deep. And maybe we look at this a little bit different. As I said earlier, if his feet are a size smaller and those 2 long twos that had a foot on a line were 3-pointers instead, and then he has 26 points and it's a little bit more efficient. Like, he's 4 of 10 from 3, and you know, the Cavs maybe win by more. Like, those things matter. But he also had 8 turnovers to 6 assists in this game. Like, that to me very clearly illustrates how much the Cavs miss Darius Garland. And Darius is not the only guy that is out right now that the Cavs miss, because I do think they miss Sam, and I do think that they miss Max too, but I think they miss them in different areas. Because what this game looked like was what the Cavs would look like, I think, and this is to the extreme end, because they're missing a lot of shooting right now. Like, when they threw out their starting lineup, because they rolled back the same starting lineup that started the game against the Thunder with Donovan, Jalen Tyson, Dean Wade, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. Like, teams are not going to close out very hard on Dean Wade because he's been an apprehensive shooter. Like, that's his reputation. Jalen Tyson's earned respect, but there are just not a lot of offensive threats on the floor in that group. So there's a lot on Donovan Mitchell's shoulders without question. But having 8 turnovers in a game is kind of what that's why I don't think, for as good as it can look at times, that this game is an example of why I don't think Donovan Mitchell playing point guard full time is something that would be remotely sustainable. I think it could have made sense. Like, could the Cavs have put Craig Porter Jr. in the starting lineup instead of Dean Wade, brought Dean Wade off the bench, and then outside of the first few minutes of the half, Donovan and Craig are split up? I think that could make sense, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Cavs go to that, considering how bad the last 2 offensive performances have been, even if the Cavs are 1-1 in those 2 games. But, like, this was a game they missed Darius's playmaking a ton, because they weren't able to really penetrate the paint in the second half. They were better about this in the first half, and they kind of just missed shots. The second half, I didn't feel like the caliber of their attempts were nearly as good. And I think a lot of that is they didn't have Darius Garland. They didn't have somebody aside from Donovan Mitchell, and the Hornets did give Charlotte credit here. They did a really good job of making it difficult to get the ball in Mitchell's hands. And that's not something that is as easily done when Darius Garland is on the floor. And I understand that those two don't play, 35 minutes together per game. But I think in the minutes that Donovan was out there, like, it was almost as if he was on this offensive island. And that is something that I think is tough to deal with, and why I do think you have to have more ball handling on the floor than just Donovan Mitchell. Like, him being your lead guard, for as awesome as he is, it's a really tough ask. It is a really, really tough ask for him to have to run everything the way that the Cavs kind of asked him to do it on Wednesday night. Jalen Tyson can do a little bit of secondary playmaking, and like, that is certainly a thing that we have seen go well at times. But overall, this was, to me, Donovan Mitchell's stat line was the prime example of the Cavs missing Darius Garland. They need him back for this offense to fully click. They've not looked the same without him, and I just don't think that we can get that peak version of the Cavs without Darius Garland. I realize that they probably don't have as good of a defensive game on Wednesday night if Darius Garland plays. Like, I get that he's not a great defender, but I just think the offensive upside that he can create when he's fully healthy is something that he can help lift this Cavs team to heights they're not capable of getting to on the offensive end of the floor without him. Like, they are not a good enough offensive basketball team without Darius Garland. Part of that is the bench production hasn't been there, but part of it is like he's a really, really good dynamic creator, and they really missed him in this game. They really missed him on Monday against Oklahoma City, and they're going to continue to really miss him as he continues to miss time with this toe injury on his right foot. Like, they're going to have to figure this out, but the early returns have not been good. Like, I think in terms of, and I'll get to Evan coming up in the third segment, because I'll just talk about missing Max and Sam now too. But the biggest area, like, they missed Garland because they missed the playmaking ability. They missed the shot making. They missed the ability for him to break down defenses. All of those things are true. But if you watch this second half, it was hard for me to watch this second half and think anything other than offensively, they just look so stagnant all the time. It's like the Cavs had to do so much work on offense just to get the ball to Donovan Mitchell. They had to do so much work to find ways to create good shots, and they struggled to get the basketball into the paint. They did not get the ball to Evan Mobley. We'll talk about that in a second. But when they have Sam out there, or when they have Max out there, at least in the past, we obviously haven't seen that this year. Offensively, the Cavs are so much more difficult to guard because there's so much more movement on the floor. Like, think of Donovan is who Donovan is, obviously. And I think that Evan is who Evan is too. But go through the rest of this offensive group for the Cavs. Like, Jared Allen is a good screen setter. DeAndre Hunter is kind of a stagnant basketball player that's better with the basketball in his hands. Jalen Tyson's an okay cutter. Naquan Tomlin's an okay cutter, but they have a lot of guys right now that are just stagnant offensive players. And you can have room for that on a team, but when the Cavs are missing the three guys, because Darius Garland is a really good guy at giving up the basketball and relocating too, like, there's a lot of movement to his game. When you're missing those three guys, like, the Cavs are missing their three main movers offensively, and I think that is why they look so stagnant on that end of the floor. Now, I thought that was because you are going to have nights where you just miss shots, and the Cavs missed a lot of shots. They were 8 of 40 from three. Should it happen to that extent? No, like, that should not happen. But part of it, I just think, is they don't move enough. Like, the ball gets a little too sticky and the players get a little too sticky. They find their spots on the floor and they say, hey, Donovan, go do something, man. And that's not a way that is a sustainable thing. It doesn't mean it's always going to be like this. It shouldn't always be like this. It shouldn't be like this without Darius Garland, but that's what I saw on Wednesday night. And that's why I thought it was so painful to watch them play offense. And then the other thing too about the second half that needs to be much better is Evan Mobley. He was awesome defensively, but on the offensive end of the floor, the Cavs need to figure this out because it's unacceptable. I'll tell you what it is next right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems, and this is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communication, one of the quickest upgrades that you can make. And that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled QUO, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with your customers. Quo makes everything super simple. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees a full conversation thread, and that makes replies faster and more personal. Works right from your phone or your computer, and you can even keep your existing number. Plus, Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight the next steps so that details never slip through the cracks. And it's no surprise, Quo is the number one rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. That is a lot of businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. So make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnba. That is Quo, QUO.com/lockedonnba. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. Thank you again for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen, and thank you to those of you that make this your first watch on YouTube. If you're watching right now, please do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest from us here at Locked On Cavs. And the other thing in the second half that I look at and just say that can't be the case anymore, as the Cavs are, blowing this lead. And I believe it got down as low as 5 near the end. And, I don't think in the final minutes, once they pushed it, Jalen Tyson had a dunk that pushed it back out to 13. Like, okay, that's kind of it. I didn't think at that point, I thought at that point the game was over, and obviously it was. But Evan Mobley, after the first half he had, where he was awesome in the first half, and you're just thinking, yes, more of this. Like, this is the guy the Cavs need Evan Mobley to be offensively. He has 2 shot attempts in the entire second half. Like, that is a number that for any half of basketball is completely unacceptable for somebody of Evan Mobley's caliber. It absolutely cannot be the case. And yes, it's tough when they don't have Darius Garland out there. It's tough with some of the lineups they were putting out there because of how many guys they're down. Like, some of these lineups right now are unquestionably offensively challenged for the Cavs. And I totally understand that, and I get that. But they need to find a way to make Evan Mobley more of a focal point, no matter what. And I get it. The Hornets, they sent more at Evan in the second half than they did the first. That was part of their strategy. They sent doubles at times, and they made Evan be a little passive. But there needs to be a way for the Cavs to find Evan Mobley the basketball in the spots that he's comfortable with more than twice a half. That cannot be the case. And I just wonder if Mobley would have, gotten 6 or 7 shots in the second half, which is not some high number. You don't think he's going to go 0 for 6 or 0 for 7. Is that enough to kind of stifle some of the runs that Charlotte was on? I think the answer to that question might be yes, and we will never know it, but that's one of the things that I look at here and just say, what, that can't be the case. And it's been the case far too often where we will see Evan go through these stretches early in the game when he's awesome, and then the Cavs don't involve him enough moving forward. It's almost like, think about way back in like the 2000s, where there would be these defensively dominant big men. And Ben Wallace is the guy that comes to mind with the Detroit Pistons. And what would the Pistons often do? Ben Wallace would take like 2 of the first 4 or 5 shots of the game for the Pistons. And you might think to yourself, well, why are the Pistons giving Ben Wallace the ball? And it's because when a guy gets, his hands on the basketball early, it tends to be better throughout the night. And that's not how Evan Mobley should be treated. And I don't think that the Cavs are purposefully treating him like this, but it needs to be something that they cannot have these halves where Evan is just an offensive ghost. And for as, I guess, invisible as he was offensively in the half, he was a monster defensively. Like, he was fantastic on that end of the floor, not just in the second half, but throughout the entire night. Like, he is, I think, a better defensive player now than last year when he won Defensive Player of the Year. He is so good defensively. It blows my mind that does not get more recognition. But I also think that offensively, the Cavs need to give him a bigger opportunity. There needs to be some happy medium between what the Cavs were asking him to do early on in the season and what the second half was on Wednesday night, because that's just not something that is good enough for anybody in this situation. Some other notes I wanted to touch upon before we get out of here. Thought DeAndre Hunter had a terrible game. He only played 13 minutes. He really didn't play much in the second half of this game. It was not good when he was on the floor. He played 6.5 minutes in the second half. He was 0 of 2 from the floor, was a -5, had 2 turnovers in the second half. Also, I believe had 2 turnovers in the first half. Like, this was just a very bad DeAndre Hunter game. Larry Nance Jr. was back in the rotation, and I actually thought he did some really good things. I thought that this might be the best that Larry Nance Jr. has looked all season. I thought he was a positive for the Cavs in this game. And, is he going to be an every night rotation guy? I don't know. But the fact that he was a plus 14 and 12 minutes off the bench, like, if you get this exact performance, not the plus 14, because that's just not a sustainable thing. But if you get this exact performance from Larry Nance Jr. every single time he's on the floor, that's a huge win. Like, I really think that the Cavs should be happy with the way that Larry Nance Jr. played. He hit a 3, grabbed a couple of rebounds, had a steal in there. Just like he did positive things. And not all of the things that he did are going to show up in the box score. But I was watching this, and there have been times earlier in the season where it's like, man, Larry seems out of place, seems a step slow. That didn't feel like it. And like, it didn't necessarily ever feel as loud as some of the bad Lonzo Ball nights because Lonzo was shooting so much, and I think that's just a louder thing. But it kind of felt like you were watching similar types of games. And this was, I think, a big step in the right direction for Larry and hopefully for the Cavs, and hopefully for Larry, he can keep this up and be a part of the rotation and do some positive things, because overall I did think that he was an additive piece for the Cavs on Wednesday night. Now the Cavs are back in action on Friday night. They're back at home. They welcome the Sacramento Kings to town for their only visit of the year. This is another game that the Cavs should win. Hopefully they have a better offensive game, because I really do not want to sit through, again, another offensive performance like we saw on Wednesday night against the Hornets. So they've got that game on Friday, and then they have another game on Saturday in Orlando against the Magic. I will have you covered after both of those games, and I will also have you covered tomorrow with another edition of Locked On Cavs. So if you're watching this video as we get out of here, please do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button on YouTube and the notification bell, and make sure that you are subscribed to Locked On Cavs wherever you are listening to this show. It's the very best way to help us out, and I will be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.